I regularly refer to you as my mate who's the polymath. My mate who kind of knows a little bit about everything, actually a great deal about the bits in technology that really count. So that was a very good kind of 20-minute overview.
Just
Joe.
a polite way of saying know it all.
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of that about it. No, but I mean that's fantastic. I think then so just thinking from a slightly different audience then. There are one or two things around that from recruiting into technology for the last 25 years. There have been some kind of common complaints, common kind of misunderstandings around technology. Right. All technologists can't communicate. Okay, I think we've just proved now that that's in fact wrong. Technologists are only interested in the technology, but not in the use of the technology. And we've had this time and time again. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to ask you the question of, how did you get to where you are now? What were the great decisions? What were the really poor decisions? If you had advice to give to anyone else, this could be an engineer that wants to move into management, that wants to move into leadership and get a role as a CTO as you have, or it could be a mid-manager that's on a track at the moment, but they're thinking, goodness me, in the world of technology today, you're approached around different roles all the time. Shouldn't take the job, should I take the job? What's the driver? Culture, behaviour, competencies. And that's incredibly broad.
Yeah.
But what broad advice would you give people?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and I've been working with our technical community and working on how we develop that. I've been working on our grad program, or our young starter program, should I say, because we're not just requiring graduates and so on and so forth.
Yes.
But I think the key word that keeps coming out in all of it is resilience. And I think, if I could teach anything, and it's something that I realized I needed to teach to my daughters, was a resilience. And the resilience piece is very important, because resilience means there's a toughness in there that gives you an ability to adapt to change. The people that fail are the people that don't adapt to change fast enough. Full stop, right?
Yep.
And so, my father's day, you started at IBM and that was where you were going to work for 35 years, as he did, right? Now, things changed during his career, but he stayed at the same company. I don't think people expect that anymore. No. That's not going to happen. So, you've got to have a base resilience and a base ability to say, okay, fine, this has happened, this has changed, how do I make the best of this? Mm-hmm. But that's probably the number one thing I'd advise anyone to have. Don't think that what you want to do when you're 18 is going to be what you want to do when you're 30 or when you're 40 or so on and so forth.
No, and there's loads of evidence. We've talked about people having a second career after their first career in their kind of 40s and 50s. I think we're going to get to a point now with, as you talked about earlier about longevity, people have 3 or 4 stages in their career. They might turn around to mentoring and teaching towards the end of it, but there'll be a mid part to their career where you could have been in technology for the first 30 years, then you got into agriculture or something totally different for the next 20 years.
Totally. I think when it's only in the last 15 years I started to do this, but when I mentored people, I suddenly realised what I was doing and kind of said, okay, fine, well, let me tell you how I do it. And it's not the answer, but I'd ask people, okay, so you're 25 years old, right? Where do you see yourself when you're 30? And where do you see yourself when you're 40? I'm not going to ask beyond that, 15 years for further. And the first thing they'll come back is, I want to be CIO or blah, blah, blah. No. Forget your career. Where do you see you at the age of 40? Do you have 2 kids? Are you married? Do you have a house by the seaside? Are you going on skiing holidays? Is that the life you want to build yourself? Or is it something different? Picture that, which is where you are happy at that age, whatever that is in 10 years' time, and then work back to how every decision I'm going to make from here on in, does that point me towards that, or does that point me away from that, right? And the picture can change, and you have a different picture for when you're 30 to when you're 40 to when you're 50, and my picture's changing now for what I want to do when I'm 60 and so on. But it's being able to sort of maintain that picture of where you see you as an individual, not your. Everyone always jumps back to the career bit. It's not. It's about you as an individual and what you want to do, and that can then also say, okay, well, actually, I'm going to invest more in my pension. I'm going to do more in this. I'm going to go and buy some properties or whatever it is. That shapes your life broader, and then we can wind down to career decisions.
Yeah. I think we're getting to a point now where people are looking. It's okay to look at your professional career and your life as one holistic viewpoint. There's so many. I'm 46. the generation I was brought up broadly was all about career. We were talking earlier on, presenteeism. If you weren't there at 8 o'clock at your desk and you weren't there leaving at 8 o'clock at night, you weren't doing a day's work. That's absolutely, we knew it was nonsense at the time, and it's been proven.
But the problem is some people still play that game. It's really annoying.
Absolutely. And I think now, we are advising internally in the company, but also our clients and our prospective candidates externally, just get the thing in balance, because there are so many stories of burnout. There's so many of just the amount of depression that you see around people, and people almost forgiving themselves for there's a better way, there's other opportunities. So stop and just choose a path, a better path. Well,
it's about, for me, if you want to look at it from a management perspective, it's okay, let's just get stuff done. And if you've got a challenge getting stuff done, come and tell me and we'll work out how we get around that challenge. It's that simple. It's not about you must be here at 8 o'clock and you must work till 5:30 and you must only have a 1 hour lunch break. And we've had these discussions in great depth. It's about let's just get stuff done, because we've got to look at how do you manage and measure people, right? And a lot of people don't like being measured, but you have to be measured in some context, right? Because I'm paying you to do stuff. But we can measure you in a way that's mutually beneficial and also we're both working towards. So how do I measure you? How do I pay you in a way that makes sense based on what you're delivering for me? But more importantly, just literally, how do we get stuff done together, right? And salespeople, a really obvious one. How do I measure salespeople? How much stuff they've sold? If you're measuring salespeople by how long they're in the office, then really you have a problem with your life, right? Developers, how do you measure developers? Is it lines of code? No, it's not lines of code. Is the application up on time and is it delivering what it's meant to deliver? It's that simple, right? It's those kind of things that we're slowly working out as a society across various bits that previously were very regimented. Now we're lucky in the IT industry because we are a young industry in the grand scheme of things, right? And so we don't have all the trappings of 100, 200, 300-year-old industry, but we have to be careful that we don't start developing those. I think that's it. So,
I think one of the things, when I look from the outside in at people broadly who have got to your level within technology, from the outside in, it seems that there are 2 or 3 things that are consistent. They are intellectually curious. I think they are not necessarily, as you said before, looking, finding a problem of which to create a solution, but they're just, they are interested in the businesses they're serving and the challenges they have. They want to make them better. They tend to be good communicators, and they tend to get a great deal of work done collaboratively through others. I think that's a big difference from sometimes how you start in technology, because a lot of people start with subject matter expertise. It's all about the output and the churn of work, as you're talking about. But as you get more senior, and I'm just thinking of people watching or listening to this, what are the behaviours?
That's what I think. If you look at what I've learned in 30 years of doing this, right? I suppose it is. I've gone through a journey. I was a techie. I was a very highly technical techie, and I thought the secret was knowing everything and having the answer to every question about my area of expertise. And then over time, I realized a few things. One was letting go of technology. So not having to be hands-on. I can still understand the value of technology. I can understand how it works. I can understand where to position it without having to actually install and run and play with it. That was the first thing. So step up and away from the technology. The second was the people piece. And to your point, it's why I've sort of encouraged my children to go and do things like psychology. And I'd rather hire people that have interpersonal skills, the ability to understand. And the people that I have to mentor the hardest, if that makes sense.
Yes,
and typically what I find they're missing is a very, very simple word: empathy.
Yeah.
And the people I have the biggest challenge with, or the people that have the biggest challenge, are the people that lack an empathy. An ability to understand what the other person in the other seat is thinking. And to do that, you have to understand how they're driven, what their desires are, what they want, and what they want next. So, people, there's a couple of individuals that I mentor, and one of them occasionally frustrates me. Say, "Oh my God, so-and-so did this, and they're being so horrible to me." And it was like, no, they're not being deliberately malicious. They're not being deliberately horrible to you. If you can just sit and think about where they're coming from.
Get into second position.
Yeah, how they're measured, how they're driven. You'll understand why they're behaving like that, and then you'll understand how to deal with them. So that's, so I suppose, that was, step back from technology, take a broader vision, have an ability to integrate and, deal with other people. And that's not difficult. I'm still an introvert. And this is interesting. So I, used to present, but not a lot. And then at it's really started at Quest Software, so nearly 20 years ago. I used to have to go and demo some software.
Yeah.
And this is the first time up until then, I've been working in small groups, deploying software and technology.
I'm guessing a kind of solutions architect.
Yeah,
type
totally.
Of role.
I was a consultant, right? It wasn't called solutions architect then because we'd not invented it. These are the days when you were systems analyst was a cool title, right?
Yeah.
So I was a consultant, and I used to go around, helping organisations deploy their, migrate from NetWare to Windows NT and all those kind of things, right? Your typical job being consultant. And then I got a job with Quest Software on the other side, developing software, and for that I had to go and demo the software, and I went and gave these presentations. And in that presentation, I chucked in a couple of techie jokes. Mm-hmm. I mean, really sad, jokes about Active Directory. I mean, how bad are you going to get, right? And people laughed, and I kind of thought, well, that's quite nice. I got some energy off that. That was interesting. And so I then realised actually I enjoyed presenting, and I enjoyed standing in front of an audience. And so I recognised, and I just ended up doing more and more and more of that, and less of the consulting and hands-on bit, and more of the presenting and the demos and the talking and the strategy, and ended up.
Did you ever did you have any coaching on that?
No. So I'd never had any formal training, but there's one thing which is really funny, right? So the only thing I've ever done for formal training for presentation was I spoke to a friend who worked somewhere else, and he was a very good presenter. I always thought he was very cool. And I said, what's your top tip for presenting? And he sent me on a residential stand-up comedy course.
Really?
Yeah, and it was the most amazing thing. At the end of it, we had to go to a local comedy. They don't do it anymore. We had to go to a local comedy club and do a 10-minute stand-up set, like literally cold in front of,
How many days did they give you to practice and teach?
2.5 days you did in front of this course. But it's really interesting because what it did was it taught me the basics of being a good presenter. Mm. Now, think back. Who are the best people you love watching on stage?
Yeah.
Comedians, right? Yeah. Now, does a comedian have PowerPoint? No, Ricky Gervais does in his thing, but he does it in a funny way. Everyone else, and Dave Gorman does to an extent, but no, they typically don't have PowerPoint. But what are they doing? They're telling stories, right? They're telling stories, and they're telling stories in a particular way. They do things called callbacks, which is where you'll sort of talk about something, and then you'll drift off, and then you'll call back to what you said earlier. And people.
I see the classic Billy Connolly.
You've got it right. Yeah, go off into one, then come back. Yeah. But then the audience is then with you because they're like, oh yeah, because I'm part of that club because I was there when you said that and I remember that kind of thing, right? Yeah. And so you realise you actually, and you're not telling a 45-minute story. No comedian tells a 45-minute story. They tell lots of stories over 45 minutes that feel like they're all joined up. And what you end up doing is you end up swapping bits in and out. So if you see me do a presentation today, this morning I did a presentation for 45 minutes. In there was a 2.5-minute section I had never tried before. Okay. So I did 42.5 minutes of stuff I know that I'm comfortable with and can deliver literally in my sleep. My wife will tell you I do, right? And then in there I chucked 2.5 minutes of a whole new bit I wanted to try. And I tried it and I went, okay, that worked, that didn't work, I kind of need to tweak that, and then I took it out. So it's not like a whole new thing, I'm just swapping bits in and out. And there's comedians that I admire, Alexi Sale, phenomenal. Yeah. In London, I think it's the Museum of Comedy, it's in the basement of a church, really good. Okay. What you'll find there is to subscribe to them because a lot of the comedians go and do their trial stuff in there. So I go and occasionally see people like Alexis Sale will stand up and just literally throw jokes out and see how people respond. How they land. Yeah. And then another guy is Stuart Lee. You ever seen Stuart Lee?
I saw our chairman took me to see Stuart Lee on a what was it? Is it something about social media? It wasn't. It was about content provider.
Yeah.
And we went to go see the very early versions of
Standing on the DVDs.
Absolutely hilarious.
So I'm a massive fan of Stuart. He's phenomenal. But because what's so clever about him is he actually delivers comedy, but deconstructs the comedy as he's delivering it.
Yes.
And teaches you. It's amazing. So
Keep up, laugh in time. I can remember all of that now.
So I learned a lot about it from him. So my delivery, I don't do stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I tell stories that are engaging.
So that's the journey from being an introvert technologist to a fully functioning extrovert presenter.
No, because I'm still an introvert.
Well,
go and find most comedians, they're introverts, right?
So you can put the game face on.
You put the face on, do the thing, then come back into your little hamster ball.
Right, so your advice to all aspiring techies is get out there and do a 5-minute set of stand-up comedy.
Well, so there's a couple of people that work for me now that sort of said, I want to do what you do. And I've been like, right, okay, well, I'm going to throw you out in front of an audience and go and do it. And the adrenaline, I still get the adrenaline. I mean, so biggest audience I've done, 23,000 people, VMware in the US. Did a couple of 10,000 plus this year, etc. So, you know, I still get the palpitations. I still go to the loo 7 times before I go on stage, all that kind of stuff. But you know, and there's a whole separate story about psychology. We'll go into a different time about that. But yeah, it's really interesting.
So were these conscious decisions that you made to end up in this career of yours, or have you been really kind of reacting to? Have you been so conscious decisions? Creating the opportunity that you could then thrive in, or being prepared when opportunity presented itself. And
so I think the presenting wasn't a conscious decision. I kind of walked into that and enjoyed it and became successful, you know, because of that. The one, I suppose, conscious decision I probably made that I could highlight was networking. I realised at a point, I was working for Quest Software, it was about 2005, and I thought, actually, my world is very small. It's just the bit I'm in. There's a broader world here, and you know, cloud was just starting, and I thought I should get involved with this a bit broader. So that's when, through complete happenstance and a friend of a contact or whatever, ended up in a pub with someone, talking to someone else, and we started Cloud Camp.
Yeah.
And I realised that, you know, that was as important to me in my career to go and be involved in Cloud Camp as it was to do my job.
Yes.
Because that networking activity, that raising of my profile, and also Twitter was just starting, so I jumped on Twitter and so on and so forth. That got to the point where actually I got asked to do the job I'm doing now, based on my profile because of what I was doing in the world of Cloud Camp and Twitter, etc., as opposed to what I was doing at my job at Quest Software.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And also it's one of those things that I recognise through knowing you for such a long time. You've always been very generous with that network. You know, the language I think people use is kind of paying it forward, you know, but you've always been very good at finding, you know, I know that person over there has got a problem, I know that person over there might have a solution, why don't you guys get together? And it takes some confidence to do that, but I do think if you're of a mindset to want to encourage people to do it, 9 times out of 10 only good things happen.